Our second reading today includes excerpts from "We're in the midst of an apocalypse, and that's a good thing," from the Washington Post article by Nadia Boltzweber. For those of you who aren't familiar with Nadia, she's a evangelical Lutheran church pastor, I think in Denver area, or was formerly. She's about 6 feet tall and has full sleeve tattoos with Virgin Mary and such. As far as pastors go, she's a rock star, so I would recommend looking her up if you're not familiar. As a clergy person, I'd like to welcome you all to the apocalypse. Pull up a chair and make yourself uncomfortable. If when you think of an apocalypse, you picture a scary, doom-filled, punishment from above type of thing, you are not alone. Originally, though, apocalyptic literature, the kind that was popular around the time of Jesus, existed not to scare the bejesus out of children so that they would be good boys and girls, but to proclaim a big, hope-filled idea that dominant powers are not ultimate powers. Empires fall, tyrants fade, systems die. God is still around. An apocalypse is a good thing, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this one. In Greek, the word apocalypse means to uncover, to peel away, to show what's underneath. That's what this country has been experiencing. The corner has peeled up, and now there is a little cat fur and dust on it, and we can't get it to stick back down. Some people may think that policy change and sensitivity training will take care of everything eventually. But real, lasting change requires an understanding of why inequality is a reality in the first place. To do that, we must take that peeled up corner and pull, even if it hurts. The venom of domination runs deeply in us as a country and a people. And it does so because the fangs that delivered it were not in the devil's name, but God's. When the subordination of women is established as God's will, when slavery is established as God's will, when the CEO of the National Rifle Association claims the right to buy a semi-automatic assault rifle is not bestowed by man but granted by God, it delivers a poison that can infect the deepest parts of us. Because messages that are transmitted to us in God's name embed far beneath the surface, all the way down to our original place, our createdness, our source code. In polite company, and even in our conscious thoughts, we may not agree. But toxic hearsay of God-ordained domination is a spiritual malady, not a cosmetic one. Wokeness and policy change are a start, but not enough to dig out the full infection. I know this because I too am infected. This is why I welcome our moment of uncovering. We need to see how deep the heresy of domination runs, and then remind one another that dominant powers are not ultimate powers. We Christians, we liberal religious people, we Unitarian Universalists need to repent of our original sins and see where we have embraced the appearance of religion only to reject its essence. This is not a new idea. Black Bible scholars, feminists, and liberation theologians have done this work well for decades now. So if those who came before looked to the Bible to justify their dominance, let us look to that and to our other sources to justify our dignity. It's in there. We must do this. The Bible, Christian theology, and liturgy, UU theology, are too potent to be left to those who would use them, even unwittingly, to justify and protect their own dominance. And sometimes the origin of the harm can be the most powerful source of the healing. That's how anti-venom works. I'd like to thank you all for having me come and join you to preach again. Some of you might remember, if you were here a year ago, that I joined you then, and now I'm back, so I did a good enough job. You asked me back, so hooray for that. This is my first time preaching in that entire year, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet, so we'll call it a homily. If you all will take a deep breath with me. The article we just encountered was what I like to think of as Nadia Bolz-Weber introduction to the ways that we can build a resilience for the end of the world. Now I'd like to introduce my personal handbook to building our resilience for the end of the world. When I was here a year ago, I had an image of myself as a liberally religious pastor standing in the middle of a football field in the political climate after the 2016 presidential election, feeling like our nation was divided. That on one side we had the political right, and on the other side we had the political left, and we were being torn apart as we're playing a tug of war. And I wanted to have a conversation about what it looks like to stand in the field and to bring people together. I have a little bit of a different image after a year of being away. I don't know about all of you watching the news cycles and things that have been happening in our global community and the wider world. Now, instead of being in the middle of that football field, I feel like I'm on the edge of a cliff, looking down, out at a void. I'm not quite sure how I got here. I don't know if any of you are feeling this way, like maybe you were running away from something, or maybe you were just trying to get as far away from something as you could, and somehow you end up at the edge of the precipice. And when I look behind me, I can see all the things that have happened since 2017. All of the difficult policies and human atrocities that have happened in our nation. And I can see how those things occurred behind me, the way that they build up the place that we got to. And I'm standing at this edge and looking out at a void, and it's scary because you don't know what comes next. You don't know where to step, and it's the unknown. And so when I'm standing in that place and I have to gather strength to find the means to keep going on in the face of an apocalypse, I've come up with 5 things that I want to share with you. And that is reckon, rest, reaffirm, shed skin, and dive in. So first we need to reckon. You know, I mentioned all that stuff on the path behind me, all of those conversations and systems and policies that led us to the place that we are now. As a people, we need to reckon. We need to be present in our current moment, in our socio-political climate. We need to see the issues as they are. We need to see the racism and the white supremacy and the white privilege. We need to see the gender inequality, discrimination against the LGBTQ population, xenophobia toward immigrants. We need to see it from our perspective, and we need to see it from the other person's perspective. And we have to be awake for that. We have to be present for that. We have to be mindful for that. And that's tough. That is painful work to take in all that information. And there's so much going on. You all are UUs. I don't need to tell you. I'm preaching to the choir. I know you read. You read the magazines. You watch the news. You're on the internet. You see what's going on. And it breaks your heart, I imagine. And you get those snippets of good, but there are some days when you hear about the last mass shooting or something else horrible that happened at the border, and it gets you in your heart. But we have to pay attention to it. It's part of our job. So after we've paid attention, and we've seen it all, and we've heard it all, and we were present to it, then we gotta rest. Because with all of that coming at us, we can end up being wounded, we can be tired, we can be hurt. So whenever you're looking at all of that tremendous suffering, you have to take time to look away. There are times when you need to tune out. You gotta turn it off. And you gotta do things that give you joy. You gotta eat the good food with your people. You gotta drink the wine. You gotta sit by the lake. You gotta hang out with the people you love most. And that's something I wanna dwell on for a second, because with climate change, with everything that's happening in this country, if we are in an apocalypse, if we are nearing the end of the world as we know it, think about who you wanna spend that time with. Who do you treasure most? Do you want to spend it with Donald Trump 24/7? No. You got to spend it with the people you love. Everybody. So do the things that give you joy. Take some time to rest. Cultivate good practices. Things that fill your cup, that rejuvenate your spirit. Come to church if that's the thing that fills you up. Find that which gives you joy. So we reckon, we rest. After we rest, we reaffirm. Because there are so many issues on the plate, and as a people who value social justice is one of the core tenets of your religion, as you reorient yourself to this apocalyptic world, you gotta reaffirm those things that you need to work on. Find the thing that bothers you the most, the thing that you can't stand to see in your reckoning. Focus on one thing, because if you try to do it all, it's gonna be overwhelming. And for some of you powerhouses, maybe you can do 2 things or 3 things. But for a lot of us, we don't have the energy for that. And when you have personal things going on in your life, meanwhile, babies are being born, people in your family are dying, things are changing. So when you take care of yourself, then you gotta choose the things you're gonna focus on. Choose where you put your energy. Reaffirm, recommit to those practices that you love most and follow them with your whole heart, but don't try to do it all. You'll wear yourself out too fast. So we reckon, we rest, we reaffirm, and then we shed some skin. So in Nadia's article, she talks about venom and the poison that exists in our country at this time. In Psalm 140, we heard about vipers with venom in their mouths. And instead of focusing on that, I'm gonna take the snake metaphor to a little bit more cheerful of a place, though the idea of anti-venom is so important. Another thing we can think about with snakes is that they shed their skin. And so in the process of reckoning and resting and reaffirming ourselves, there might be some things that we need to let go of, or that we need to shake off. And so that's something you can think about. What is it that you need to let go of to be able to do the first three things mentioned? And none of this has to be in any particular order. You have to do it your own way. So maybe it's not going to be just that, but if there are things to let go of, it's something to pay attention to in your own life. And when you let go of things in your own life, it makes room for those things to be shed in the life of our nation too. And we can work on not just shedding our skin, but shedding the skin of domination, of oppression, of sexism, of racism from our nation. Starting one person, one community at a time. And so I'd argue if we do these things, we reckon, we rest, we reaffirm, we shed some skin, peeling back that layer so the apocalypse can happen, that then we'll be ready to dive in. And if you're standing at that precipice and you're looking out at the void, the apocalypse, the end of the world, and you don't know what's coming, but you've reckoned, you've rested, you've reaffirmed, and you've shed some things and let go, you'll be ready to take that parachute, to get that bungee cord, and just dive right in. And whenever we get to that place where we're ready to dive in, I'm hoping that we'll remember, as we dive, this line from Nadia's article. That we dive into the hope-filled idea that dominant powers are not ultimate powers. Empires fall, tyrants fade, systems die. God, that which you honor above all, is still around. May it be so.